chance to understand, right? How to respond. But well, now you're gonna find, I think, the second task even easier because you're not gonna have the necessity to look for arguments or illustrations or things of that sort. Understand, right? But you're gonna have to, well, the only concern and worry to think about the material that ETS gives you. You're going to understand what I mean in a minute, okay? So, well, let's start. I have prepared, of course, a presentation for you, and let us get into it. So, remembering very much quickly what we discussed last week, we said that the speaking section contains 4 different tasks. And remember that what I mean by task is simply a question, right? We have 4 different questions in the speaking section. Now, the first question, let us put it this way. Although we have 4 different questions, we merely have 2 different types of questions. And we said last week that the first question is the only one that belongs to that first type of question. The first question is called independent question. And we saw that for that type of question, we had to rely on ourselves in order to respond. We needed to look for arguments, we needed to look for illustrations, and all of that came out of us. It came from our experience, it came from our knowledge, it came from our beings, basically, right? Now, we are not going to have a chance because from the second question and to the fourth one, all that group of questions is part of the second type of question. That is to say, the integrated questions. You're going to find that the second, the third, and the fourth question are very similar among each other because they share the same type. They share the same category. That is to say, all of them are integrated questions. And you're going to find that these questions are, as I told you, actually easier to respond because although, yeah, you are not independent anymore, you cannot, let's say, rely on your own knowledge, data, and experiences to respond to questions. This time, you're going to have something better. You're going to have to receive material from ETS, okay? And you're going to summarize it. We're going to get into that, okay? So having, of course, clarified and, of course, refreshed that in your minds, let us get into our topic for tonight's class. That is, as I told you, the second task of the speaking section. Thank you for those of you who are just joining. We're going to start with a second task in the speaking section, okay? So what is the second task all about? For this task, dear students, you will have to read a short written passage that is about 80 to 100 words long. It is mostly an announcement about a change happening to campus, a shift in a class schedule, or a new bus service. I want you to think about this. In the last question we examined and practiced together last week, the only thing you received from ETS was a very short statement or topic. And then the rest came from your own mind. It came out of your experience. It came out of your knowledge, your data. It was you, right? It was you responding to the question independently. This time, you're going to receive more than a simple statement or topic. You're going to receive 2 materials from ETS. What is that first material? A reading passage. Don't get troubled. It's not a very long reading passage. As you can see, it's from 80 to 100 words, a very short reading passage. And you're going to have to read this passage, okay, before you can receive the second material. What is this reading passage going to be about? It is normally going to be about a change, an event, an activity happening on campus, happening in a university, okay? Anything that could take place in a university, a new society, a new professor, a new tournament, a championship, a debate, whatever you can think of that could be part of a university is a likely topic for this reading passage, okay? When you finalize reading this passage, very short, as I say, you're gonna receive the second material from ETS. What is that material? A listening passage. You'll be listening to a conversation regarding the same announcement. Now let's go back for a minute. I told you that you have to read a passage that is very short. This passage is going to be discussing, for example, a new professor in a university, the admission or the recruitment of a new professor in a university. When you read that, then you're going to have to listen to a conversation of 2 speakers. These conversations, by the way, are always of two speakers, okay? They are never composed of more than two speakers, by the way. You don't have to worry about that. It's just two speakers. The thing is that you listen to this conversation and you're going to notice that these two speakers are always going to be discussing the very same topic you read about in the passage before this conversation. As I told you, if your reading passage is about a new professor entering the university, a new professor being hired, then when you listen to the conversation, these people in the conversation are going to be two students from the same university where this professor is being admitted, and they're going to be sharing their opinions and thoughts on this professor. You're going to notice that one of those speakers is going to say, no, I don't like this professor, dude. You know, I just think that it's very much incompetent. He shouldn't be here. And it's going to express his opinion, and it's going to give reasons why he has that opinion. You remember what you were doing in the first stats of the speaking section? You offered your opinion, right? And then you offered arguments or reasons why you had that opinion. Basically, there is going to be one speaker in this conversation, okay, just one speaker that is going to be doing exactly the same, okay? Now, this conversation is not very long, by the way. It lasts approximately 1 minute, okay? No more than that. And then, what is your task, okay? Maybe you're wondering, okay, so I get this reading passage, then I get the conversation, but what do I do with all of this? What is it that I'm supposed to do? What you're supposed to do with these two materials, dear students, and listen very well to this, is to prepare a summary. That's it. Your task in this second question is to prepare a summary of the reading passage and a summary of the listening passage. And that's it. Your response is going to be constituted of the reading passage summary and the listening passage summary, the conversation summary. That's all. You don't have to think about any argument. You don't have to complement something. You don't have to make any addition. No. Summarize. Look at the picture that I have here on my screen. Why do you think I put this picture here? A very simple reason. The picture is one of a journalist, right? Notice you have a very common journalist there using a pencil to take notes on her notebook, microphones to interview people, etc. What does a good journalist do? Let us think about it for a minute. What does a good journalist do? The first thing that a good journalist does is to go out to look for information, right? He looks for information into different sources. That is the first thing I want you to notice. For example, if a journalist wants to cover, let's say, the story of a very popular singer, what is that journalist going to do? The first thing is he's going to go to this famous, let's say he wants to make an article, or he wants to make some sort of interview to Michael Jackson, right? We know that, of course, Michael Jackson is dead, whatever, but let's say he wants to interview Michael Jackson. So the first thing this journalist would do is to go to Michael Jackson's family. And he would say, hey, what can you tell me about Michael? Is Michael good? How was his childhood? Was Michael a very good student? How was him with girls? How was him, right? That is his first source of information. A good journalist, what he would do afterwards would be to go for a second information source. He will go, for example, to look for Michael Jackson's best friend. And he would say, hey, dude, I know that you're Michael's best friend. What can you tell me about Michael? Right? And he'll say, hey, could you tell me about your experiences with him, your best memories? And then finally, maybe the same journalist is going to go to Michael Jackson itself, and it's going to say, hey, Michael, what can you tell me about your childhood, right? What can you tell me about your fame now? So notice what the journalist is doing is to look for different information sources. And that he does it very much easily and very much correct. What he does next is to take notes on all of those information sources. He takes notes while he's interviewing Michael Jackson's family, while he's interviewing Michael's best friends and Michael Jackson itself. He takes notes, right, on his notebook. And when he comes back to the office, what does he do? He prepares a summary. He takes information from this first information source, from this other source, from this other source, and he prepares a summary. And what he does with that summary is to offer that summary to his audience, and that's it, that's his work. But notice, a good journalist would always make a summary that doesn't change the interaction. Imagine that, for example, he doesn't like Michael Jackson. He will have to forget about that. We'll have to say, okay, well, I don't like Michael Jackson personally. But anyways, I'm not going to say that he, for example, was a very abusive child if his family didn't tell me that. If his family told me he was a lovely guy, very much gentle, etc., well, that is what I'm going to say. I'm going to say that he's a very gentle, intelligent guy, because that is what the information source told me. He's going to respect the information as he received it. He's not going to alter the information. He's not going to disrupt the information. That is what a good journalist does. Okay, think about it. A good journalist respects the information and conveys that summary to his audience very much loyally. He doesn't disrupt it. He doesn't change it. And that is what you have to do. When you prepare your summaries from both of your information sources, in this case, what are your information sources? The reading passage and the conversation. So when you prepare your summaries for both of them, you're not going to disrupt it. You don't have to alter the information. You don't have to complement it with your own knowledge. No, you simply have to limit yourself to express that information you received from the reading passage and from the listening passage as you receive it, yeah, but in a simplified manner. That is what a summary is, right? A simplified version of a very difficult thing. But that said, you don't have to complement something else, or you don't have to disrupt or change it. No, respect it. As you receive it, also deliver it, but in a very simplified manner, okay? That's what you do. Now, how much time do you have for doing all this? Look at this. For reading the passage, okay, the reading passage, you're gonna get 45 seconds. As you can see, it's a very short time, but that is not a big deal. You know why? Because the reading passage, dear students, is very, very short. As we said, it's basically 80 to 100 words long. It's a very short thing, okay? So you're gonna bet with me here that these 45 seconds are gonna be sufficient, okay? Once you read that passage in 45 seconds, you get the chance to listen to the conversation, as I told you. That is going to last for approximately 1 minute, 1 minute and a half, never more than 2 minutes, okay? That is where the conversation lasts. And then you're gonna get 30 seconds to prepare a response. If you notice, you get more time than before. Previously, in the first question, you got 15 seconds, now you get 30, okay? In order, of course, to take all the notes you collected on the reading section, on the listening section, and to prepare a summary with that, right? A summary for the reading and a summary for the listening. And then how much time do you have for delivering all this? 60 seconds. In this case, you get extra time for responding to this question because previously you used to have 45 seconds, right? Now you get 60, 1 entire minute, okay? So I think it's an adequate time, it's fine. And trust me, if you administer your time correctly, it's going to be totally sufficient, okay? There you are. So that's how you respond to this. Now, before I give you some time to make questions, I want to give you some, I want to show you this on the simulator, and then I'm gonna give you some space to make questions, okay? So please let me go right now to the simulator, and let me show you how this looks like on the actual exam, okay? Let's enter together, and then you're gonna have a chance to make some questions, okay? All right, let's go to practice, custom practice. Speaking, sorry, and speaking to, here we are. Well, let's go. So first thing you see on your screen when entering the second task of the speaking section, a set of instructions. You don't need to read this because you already know what to do. That's why you're taking these classes. But if you want, you can read it, okay? It's just a reading passage, well, about this, what you have to do, how much time do you have, etc. But you know all that beforehand, okay? So the actual question is this one. When you enter the question, you're going to be looking at the reading passage that, as you can see in this case, is this one. Not very long, right? It's very short. This is the reading passage. It contains a title. And above that, you're gonna get some sort of context. some lines of text that are going to be giving you some background, some context for you to understand what this reading passage is all about, okay? So it's not very difficult, trust me. And I recommend you to read this actually, because as I said, it offers you some sort of context and background, which at the end, if you want to understand this, you have to, of course, accept, right, and to read it. So let us read it together in this case, what it says. The university will be making changes to one of its campus dining areas. You will have 4 or 5 seconds to read the university's announcements about the changes. Begin reading now. And there you will read this. On the exam, you're gonna get a chronometer, okay? You're gonna have a chronometer. And this chronometer, by the way, is going to be on one of your corners, okay? Could be on the right corner or in the left corner. The thing is that the chronometer on the exam goes backwards, okay? 45, 44, 43, 42, not upwards, as in this case. So when the 45 seconds are over, the computer is going to take you automatically to the next part, which is, as you know, the conversation, okay? But now, let's say that you finalize reading this passage in 30 seconds and not 45 instead. So what do? What you do is to take all this, okay, the reading passage, and you start thinking about what is going to be your summary of this later on. Because remember, maybe you read this in 30 seconds. So if you have 45 seconds, that means that you will have 15 remaining seconds to do something. Most people, when they have finalized before the time is over, they press this button next to go directly to the conversation. Don't do that. Instead of that, use that remaining time for you to think about what is going to be your summary of this reading passage in your response. Because remember, you cannot simply read this and that's your summary. No, you have to summarize it with your own words. So please start thinking about that right from this point if you have some extra time, okay? That's my recommendation. Don't press next. Use the entire 45 seconds to read and you're gonna be very happy, trust me. All right? So when the computer takes you to the next part, this is what you're going to see. The conversation. As you can see in this case, I can reproduce it by myself. This is not the case on the exam, all right? On the exam, you do not reproduce anything. The computer does everything automatically, all right? So in this case, I can reproduce it, and of course, I can pause it. But on the exam, you cannot do so. You cannot repeat it anyways, because you listen to this conversation once, not twice, okay? Not 3 times, once. So please, as you listen to this once, take your notes, okay? Because all those notes are going to be of incredible value for you to take your summary and to prepare your summary later, okay? So please, as you listen to this conversation, take your notes. You already know how to take efficient notes, so please apply all that knowledge here. So you take your notes, okay? You go about taking your notes. And what you do is to, of course, you get the chance to listen to this once. You listen and you take your notes. When this finalizes, okay, when this finalizes, the computer is going to take you to the next part, which is, of course, the menu where you actually respond to the question. How much you have? 30 seconds to prepare our response, right? And in this 30 seconds, once again, a chronometer is going to appear on your screen, going backwards, 30, 29, right, etc. You get those 30 seconds to prepare a response, and what you would normally do would be, of course, to take the notes you got on the reading section, your notes on the listening section, and you start writing on your paper what is going to be your summary of both of these parts. Don't worry, I'm going to offer you a template and structure for you to know how to do this, okay? But we're going to get into that in a second. And when you finalize your 30 seconds to prepare a response, you get 60 seconds, an entire minute, as I told you, to respond the question, to look for responses. That is to say, to deliver your summary and to deliver your summary of the reading passage and your summary of the listening passage. That's how it works. Once again, a chronometer going backwards, 60, 59, 58, 57, until 1, okay? Is there any question, dear students, with regard to this menu, with regard to the second task and to this point? Questions about the menu, questions about the general aspects? Tell me, please. Any question? Daniela, Alex, Grisel, is there any question for this part?
No questions for the moment.
Okay, thank you very much,
It was
Roulette.
clear, teacher.
Okay, thank you, Rizal. Awesome, guys. Well, so if there are no questions, then what I want to do before I show you the template is to, of course, give you illustrations. Okay, I think we always understand better by illustrations. So let me show you some of them. Okay, I recorded myself once again, and well, let's go and listen to my responses. In this case, before we listen to my response, of course, we need to, well, read and listen to the passages first. So let's go to our first practice of the task number 2. And well, here we have. So I'm gonna paste this to the chat box, okay, for you to read it with me. Nonetheless, I'm going to read it aloud for you to understand and follow me, okay? So this will be the first reading passage. If this were the exam, we would get a chronometer here, went backwards, okay? So let's go. Let us read this together. It says, the university is planning to offer free Spanish courses this semester. Due to an influx of exchange students from Spain and Latin America, starting this semester, the university will be offering free Spanish language tuition for interested parties. Participation in these courses is limited, however, and preference will be given to those students taking part in activities directly related to the exchange program. Go to the university website for further details. Well, as you can see, very short reading passage. You will read this in 30 seconds normally, so you will get 15 extra seconds to start thinking about your summary of this. Okay, not very difficult to summarize anyways, because as I said, it's short, so very difficult, right? To summarize it. Excuse me, not to summarize it. Yeah, so after you read this, then you will listen to a conversation on the same topic from students that pertain to the same university. Let's do that together. And notice, as I say, there's going to be one speaker that is going to be offering his opinion or her opinion and defending it, giving arguments, reasons. That's what I want you to notice, because we're going to discuss that in a minute, okay? So please listen and take your notes.
Now listen to 2 students discussing the Spanish classes.
What do you think about the Spanish courses the university is offering?
I'm not sure. I mean, last semester they did the same thing with an IT course, and it was booked out within 10 minutes of the registration from going online.
You think it'll be the same for this?
Well, yeah. Spanish is a popular language to learn, and look at what it says about the preferences given. There are going to be loads of students who fit the bill for preferential access.
Well, I'm going to give it a look anyway. I might get lucky.
Sure. To be honest, I think it would be better if they didn't make the course free. A lot of people will sign up just because they don't have to pay anything, then not turn up to half of the classes. If you have to pay for something, you're more likely to use it.
I'm not sure. I mean, this way it's accessible even to poorer students.
I guess so. I suppose I'm still annoyed that I couldn't do the IT course last semester. I really needed the chance to brush up on my computing skills.
There you are. Well, as you notice then, in this case, the students here discussed the very same topic, right? They were discussing how these free Spanish courses were, well, planned to be free for students in the university, but in a limited basis, right? Because merely people who were engaged with the program directly will get the chance to have preference. Now, notice that in this conversation, there were 2 speakers, right? And just one of them was offering her opinion and offering reasons why he had that opinion. In this case, it was the female student. And what I want you to understand is that this figure, dear students, of a speaker that always offers his opinion and defends it, and the other one who merely reacts to that particular speech, is present in every single question of this type, in the second type of question. Okay? You're going to practice together, a lot, and you're going to realize this by yourselves, that there's always a main speaker and a secondary speaker, and that is where I wanted to arrive. What do I mean by main speaker and secondary speaker? What I mean by secondary speaker is that person who doesn't actually offer anything relevant to the conversation. The only thing that a secondary speaker does is to initiate the chat, initiate the conversation, and then reacting. He reacts to that particular speech that the main speaker delivers. Because what does the main speaker do? The main speaker offers his opinion and defends it, gives reasons, some details, some experiences why she or he has that opinion. That main speaker is the relevant one, is the person offering relevant and important information to the conversation. Because as I say, the secondary speaker dedicates himself or herself to merely react. He says things like, hey, that's true, or no, you're wrong, or are you sure? Or, oh yeah, I've been thinking that too. He reacts, but he never actually takes the initiative and say, I actually think this because of this and this. No, he never does so. The main speaker does it. The main speaker says, I actually dislike this because of this reason and because of this and this and that. As the female speaker did in this case, you say, I think this is ridiculous because people who take these courses, they just do it because it's free. They are not actually interested in learning Spanish. So as you notice, she's not merely saying what she thinks, but she's also defending why she has that opinion. As you did in the first task of the speaking section, the main speaker always does it to here. So why do I tell you all this? I tell you this because in your summary, okay, and we're going to listen right now to my response. In your summary of the listening part, concentrate all your efforts, concentrate all your time, all your resources, all your minds and ideas to discuss what the main speaker said. Your summary of the conversation should be completely focused on the main speaker and not the secondary speaker. Actually, my recommendation would be ignore him, despise him, discard him, dispense with him. The secondary speaker is useless, it's irrelevant. So there's no reason why to mention it in the summary you are making of the conversation. Don't talk about it, okay? You don't need to talk about him or her. The only thing you have to do is to center your entire summary on what the main speaker said, the reasons he said, and also, of course, the details you can find he also included in his response, okay? So notice that. Please always follow this, it's very important. Never try to, as I say, discuss what the secondary speaker said. No, don't even mention, okay? Well, now listen to my response to this particular question. You're gonna have a chance to listen. And you're going to notice that what I do is very simple. I start by summarizing the reading passage, and then I summarize the listening. And that's it pretty much. Of course, I'm gonna show you an example anyways, but listen to my response.
In the reading passage, we observe that the university wants to offer free Spanish courses since next trimester to all students, but especially to those who are engaged with exchange programs. On the other hand, we also observe a student who disagrees with this modality because she considers that just as it happened with the IT classes, so many people, just because the courses are free, are going to register and many students are going to stay out of the lessons. She also considers that given that Spanish is a very popular language, many students will also be super interested in learning this language and many people will simply stay out of the lessons. She also considers that the university should make these courses not free but pay, and that way just the students who are really interested in these courses will take part of them and not just the students who, because the courses are free, get into.
Well, there you are. As you noticed, my response consisted of my summary of the reading passage and my summary of the conversation. Notice that in my response, I spend less time summarizing the reading passage and more time in the conversation. We're going to get into that, okay? But before I do so, please let me give you the opportunity to read and to listen to another exercise so that you can also, of course, listen to my, listen to my response, okay? So let's come back to my presentation and let us go to the, to the second question. It's not here, to the second question. Okay, big screen. Awesome. So listen, well, I'm gonna read aloud anyways, but here you have it. All right. There you have. Okay, so I'm gonna read this, please follow me. Second practice, okay? It says the campus fitness center will permanently close at the end of this semester. This decision was made by the university administration in coordination with representatives of the Student Association. Unfortunately, the building currently hosting the center is very old, and the university can no longer afford the cost of maintaining it or providing heat and air conditioning as required. Furthermore, several private fitness centers in the city, furthermore, the popularity of the center has declined since the university formed partnerships with several private fitness centers in the city. These partnerships mean that all full and part students can access 5 privately owned gyms across the city at no cost. Well, here we have the reading passage. Now let's listen to the conversation and please try to identify who is the main speaker and who is the secondary speaker. Very important because you're going to use this when responding later, okay? Listen to this, take your notes, please, so that we can compare later.
What do you think about this announcement?
To be honest, I'm completely opposed to the plan.
Really? Why?
Because shutting down the fitness center isn't really going to save much money. I mean, sure, the building is really old, but even if it isn't used on a regular basis, the school still has to maintain it. They have to make sure it is safe and that it doesn't become a fire hazard or something like that.
I didn't think about that.
Right, and even tearing the building down will be expensive because of all the construction workers they'll have to hire. Plus, once it's gone, we're going to need to replace it with something new, so we shouldn't shut down the gym just to save money.
You make a good point.
And it's not like all the students can easily use the gyms in the city. The closest one is a 30-minute drive from school. How are people who live in dorms on campus supposed to reach them if they don't have their own car?
You know, I took a taxi to one of the gyms and it cost nearly $20. I can't afford to pay them much money every time I want to exercise.
Exactly. And even if you can afford to pay for a taxi, it will be really challenging to get one if you want to exercise late at night. I don't think that was really considered when the decision to close the fitness center was made.
All right, there you are, guys. So you listen, right, to that conversation. And if you notice, it's exactly the same topic we have read together. So that is exactly what you do, right? And this is going to be repeated every single time when you are practicing this with me or by your own in your independent practices. The reading and, of course, the conversation are connected, as I told you. There is some sort of relationship between them. The reading passage is going to discuss something, and then in the conversation, 2 speakers are going to be discussing the very same thing. In this case, students from the same university discussing if they like the idea of shutting down this facility, right? And in this case, as you notice, once again, we had the figure of a main speaker and a secondary speaker, right? I hope you managed to identify them, to find out which of them was, of course, the main speaker, the one that had this very much relevant information to add to the conversation, which in this case, of course, was the male student, right? So, well, now that you have recognized that, let us, of course, listen to my response to this task, okay, and question. So please listen to how I will have responded to this, and then I'm going to have a chance to show you the template and the structure for you to use it as well in your responses, okay? Let's go and listen.
To begin with, we have seen in the reading passage that the university plans to close the campus fitness center permanently because they consider that nobody uses it and because they consider that students can go to the private gyms that they have hired across the city, and also because the maintenance costs for these fitness centers are too high for the university. On the other hand, we have seen that a student disagrees with this because he considers that this is not going to save money. The university will still have to maintain the buildings, and maybe these buildings are going to provoke a fire, and that is going to cost a lot of money. He also considers that if they want to demolish it, they will have to pay workers, and that is also going to cost a lot of money. He also considers that the alternative gyms are not easily reached by other students because they are far away from the university, they are too expensive, and many people who work out by night will not be able to find a taxi.
Great, there you are. That was my response. Well, if you noticed, apart from always making a summary of the listening part and discussing what the main speaker said instead of what the secondary speaker said, Actually, if you were very much scrupulous when listening to me, I always ignore the secondary speaker completely. I don't even mention him or her. The only thing that I do is to make a summary of the conversation, talking about what the main speaker said, what was his or her opinion, the reasons why having that opinion, etc., etc. And that is what you should do as well. Now, if you notice too, I was following the exact same structure or template during both of my responses, and I want to show it to you, okay? Here you have the structure that I was using during my responses and the one that we recommend you to use as well in yours, okay? So as you can see, there is a similarity between this template and the first one. That is that in this case, we have 4 different steps too. The first step consists once again of an introductory phrase. Look at it. It's to begin with in the reading passage, okay? This is what I always said, right? When starting my responses, to begin with in the reading passage. And then here comes what the reading passage said. That is to say, your summary of the reading passage. Every single time I mention that sentence, I immediately jumped to my summary of the reading passage. For example, to begin with, in the reading passage, we have seen that the university wants to shut down the fitness center. And notice that in this case, what I'm doing is I'm summarizing the reading passage, but very much superficially, right? I'm summarizing it actually in one very short sentence. I'm not having a chance here to summarize it in 30 seconds, in 15 seconds, in 20 seconds. No. And I'm doing this on purpose, by the way. If you noticed in both of my responses, my summary of the reading passage was considerably shorter, smaller than my summary of the reading part, excuse me, of the conversation or the listening part. And this is something that you should also imitate. What I recommend you to do is, please, dear students, make the most superficial and concise summary you can think of the reading passage. Never please mention or say something very much long. Don't get into the specifics, into the details of the reading passage. It's not necessary. Make it as superficial as you can, at least here in the reading passage. As I say, my summary of the reading passage, which is read, was to begin with in the reading passage, we have seen that the fitness center is going to be shut down by the university. And notice that there is a very short summary of the reading passage, and it's super concise, it's superficial. It's not something very much complete or, let's say, detailed. And that is on purpose because notice, the reading passage, for example, had the reasons why the university wanted to shut down that part, the alternatives that they were given to the students, many things actually. But notice that in this case, we are not using that. We are not including that into our summary of the reading passage. And the only reason why we do so is because we don't care. We want to make, as I say, the most superficial summary of the reading passage. If you can summarize it in one sentence, as I do, fantastic. That's it. Summarize it in one sentence, okay? Because the reading passage is not that important. What the reviewer is going to care about is your summary of the listening passage. And now that we are summarizing the reading passage in a very short, concise, and superficial manner, then we're going to have the chance as well to certainly summarize the conversation, the listening passage, in a very much detailed manner, if you want, because we're going to have a lot of time, okay? So when you finalize your summary of the reading passage, you jump to the second part. That is to say, on the other hand, this is, by the way, a transition phrase as the one we've been using also in the first task of the speaking section. It's a transition phrase, on the other hand, por otra parte, right? And here comes your summary of the conversation, of the listening part. So you will summarize this, for example, and say, right, on the other hand, we have listened that 2 students are discussing this, and one of them disagrees with this decision, right? And then you go to the third and to the fourth step. The third and the fourth steps are basically reminders to you that your summary must include the first, the second, and the third and the fourth argument, if they exist, of the main speaker that constitute why he has that opinion. Remember that I told you the main speaker was doing exactly what you did in the first task of the speaking section. You offer your opinion, but you also offer some reasons, some arguments. And notice that the main speaker in this case is doing exactly the same. So what I want you to understand is that your summary of the conversation, in order to be complete, must contain all the arguments, reasons, and etc. that the main speaker has given for defending his or her position. You must include them, okay? If the main speaker merely has 2 arguments, include them. If he has 3, 4, include them. The idea is to include all the arguments, all the reasons within the response so that your summary is complete. Because remember, what is a summary? A summary is basically a simplification of a very difficult topic, including all the main points of the same. So, as we said, the main speaker is the person offering the relevant and therefore the main information in this conversation. And if you want to have a good summary, a complete summary, therefore you need to, yes or yes, include those arguments and reasons within your response. All right. So that's the reason why I tell you, please include them, discuss them, talk about what these arguments were. And if you remember at this point, any detail, any illustration that the speaker gave, use it, okay? For example, I could say, on the other hand, we listened to two students discussing this, and one of them disagrees with the decision to shut down the center. He believes this, first of all, because he considers that the fitness center will still represent a very high waste of money to the university. He says that it needs to be maintained in order to avoid fires on campus. Secondly, he also considers that the alternative gyms across the city are very much far away, and very rarely the students are going to be able to reach these places without a lot of complications. And actually, it's very difficult to find taxis lately at night, right? Notice, I'm summarizing in this case with way more detail and taking more time to summarize the listening passage. And that's because, as I say, the listening passage is what the reviewer cares about. The reading passage is actually just some sort of complement. We are including a summary of the reading passage because we want the response to be complete, let's say. But the important point here is to make a fantastic summary of the listening part of the conversation, to offer a good summary of it, to mention as many details as we can, but most importantly, the arguments that the main speaker gave, right? And that's it. That's how you respond to this question. And you can repeat it, of course, use this template in your responses too. If you have any question, your students, any doubt, concern with regard to how to respond to this question, please tell me. Daniela, Arlette, Giselle, any question with regard to this template?
Yes, teacher, I have one question.
Tell me.
Well, in our response, as it is mentioned in the structure, do we have to mention the main speaker in the response, or we just have to say, as you said in your response, the student was not agree or something like that?
Yeah, very good question. Yeah, you don't need to mention something like, well, the main speaker said this and that. And actually, the main speaker is not a term that ETS is familiarized with. I invented that term just because I wanted to make a differentiation between two speakers to make you understand that your emphasis should be on that speaker. So yeah, you can just simply say, well, in the conversation, we listened to two students and one of them had an opinion. And he said that he has a slight idea because of this and this and that. You don't need to say the main speaker, yes or yes. Or you can actually say the female students or the male speaker disagree if you want. You can here decide to make your mention of the speaker more specific or less specific. It's simply irrelevant. But if you like to make them more specific, you could say, well, the male speaker said this, or the female speaker said this, and she considered and she had this argument. You know, you can make it more specific if you want, but it is not necessary. You can simply say, as I do, there was one speaker, one student who disagreed with it because he had these reasons, right? And first of all, he thought, etc., right? But you don't need to say main speaker, or you don't need to specify with the gender of the speaker or something. It's not necessary. Yeah, is that fine?
Yes, teacher, thank you.
My pleasure. Any other question, guys? Any other concern here? I'll let Daniela, questions?
No, teacher.
No questions.
Okay.
Okay, fantastic. Great then. Well, so this is said with regard to the structure. Now, before we go, let us just very much rapidly get into these recommendations, okay? Tomorrow, we're going to practice, and the rest of our class tomorrow is going to be for practice, okay? So please get into that. But before we go, recommendations. For this section, you must be very general, okay? Concise, while summarizing both materials you'll receive. Nonetheless, if you're going to emphasize in one item, as I told you, let it be in the listening item. Spend more time summarizing the conversation you just listened to. So yeah, that's my recommendation there. Also, it's going to be advantageous if you prepare your response in the interlude between the first task and the second one with the outlines you'll follow. What do I mean by this? So as we said, in the exam, we have blank sheet of papers, or we get a blank whiteboard, right? So the first thing you do, the first thing I would recommend you is you get your blank sheet of paper, right? Write down the structure there and leave for yourself some space between each part of the structure, because you're going to use that blank space, that empty space, for you to fill it with the information you're going to include in your summaries. But if you write down the structure beforehand, you're going to have a very good visual reference to respond very much fluently, and also, of course, knowing what parts or what elements of the response to include, okay? This is going to help you to always know what to say at every single time, okay? So please, the first thing you do when you take your sheet of paper, okay, your students is to look at it, all right? You look at your sheet of paper and you write down your structure. You leave yourself some space, as you can see here, some blank space, right? Some empty space, and there you're going to fill it once you read and once you listen, of course, right? You fill that part with the information you want to include in your summary. That's a very good recommendation I have for you. This helps you to save time, helps you to have a very organized response. And yeah, that will be with regard to my recommendations here. Is there any question about this? Anything that I could clarify? Yeah, Grisel, please tell me.
Yes, teacher, sorry, one more question.
Mhm.
What do the test takers evaluate in this part? And I'm talking about the grammar structure. Maybe if I mention all the points that the speakers said, what is important in this part? Maybe I forgot some part, but would that be significant at the moment they evaluate?
Okay, good question. Um, there are some criteria, and the first one, as you said, is not to forget to mention all the main ideas of the conversation. Okay, that's the reason why I'm making a lot of emphasis here. Always mention all the arguments and reasons that the main speaker presents, because those are the main ideas. Those are the most important parts of the conversation. Now, apart from that, of course, it's not necessary for you to mention every single detail, right, or every single I don't know, illustration that the main speaker gave. Not necessary. You can, of course, mention as much as you can. That, of course, higher your score. It helps you to increment it. But apart from that, they, of course, measure your fluency, your capacity to organize the response, to make it well understandable. And that's the reason why we're having this structure, right? Because if we were to the exam, if we went, excuse me, to the exam without any type of template, and we would just start to give a summary, starting with the conversation and then to the reading, it will be a chaos. But the structures might help you a lot with that order. Apart from that, of course, good vocabulary, the absence of errors, blunders, silences, etc. But that is mostly the criteria they use to evaluate this. If you don't forget any of the main ideas, okay, of course you can forget details and illustration. That's normal. You cannot include everything, but the main ideas should be present here. The fluency, the order, of course, the clearness and correctness of your grammar, and then of course, if you don't commit any mistake or blunder, or if you don't stay silent, right? That's how you get evaluated in this part, by those elements. Yeah, is that fine?
Yes, teacher, thank you.
My pleasure. Very good. Well, great, guys. So if there are no more questions, then we're gonna stop here tonight. And as I said, tomorrow is gonna be a full practical class, okay? the entire class, we're going to practice together for this task. So please, I commend you to come with your microphone prepared, a good environment for you to speak, and with, of course, sheets of paper to take notes, okay? So before you go, please help me with your kind responses to our traditional poll as I take your statements, okay? And if you have any other commentary or question, please feel free to express it. Okay, here we are. So it's here present or dear Arlette Gabriela.
Present. I'm here.
Thank you very much, dear Arlette, fantastic. What about Daniela Lourdes?
Here, teacher.
Thank you very much, dear Daniela. And finally, we have Grisel Paz.
Yes, teacher, present.
Thank you very much, Grisel. Well, fantastic, guys. Thank you very much then for your kind responses and also for your presence tonight. I'm going to be seeing you tomorrow to practice this together. So please have a fantastic night.
Thank you, teacher. You too. See you tomorrow.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
See you tomorrow.
See you
Bye-bye. See
tomorrow.
you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.